Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are we all doing this morning? Bit of an issue this morning, which I'll bore you with in just a moment. While I was away, my computer updated, and now I don't have my usual buttons to hand. Just for today, I'll fix it, but I only found out about 10 minutes ago, so I'm going to go through manually. We have a new record, by the way. A lot of people have tried to tune in early, but Andy Darvell has now set a new standard. He tuned in at 9:02 a.m. 2 days ago. Wow, that is something a bit special. I don't know where he's gone, but it was there, I promise you. Yeah, 47 hours early. Good morning to all at Demolition News Towers. Hope you had a fantastic few days at Hillhead. I did, and I'll tell you all about it in just a second. We're on the countdown, says Dan Cullen. Morning, Dan. Jim Turner, my new best friend. We now know what each other looks like. Well, I'm fairly sure he knew what I looked like anyway, but I could now pick Jim out of a crowd. Morning, Jim. Thanks for the chat. Lots to talk about, or lots to think about, certainly. Gary Muirhead's here as well. Morning, Gary. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, guys, and welcome back. Good to be back. As I said, Hillhead was really, really good, but it's always good to get back here. Top of the morning says Dan Cullen. Mark Whiting says good morning, and good morning to you, Mark. Andy here, looks like they got the best of the weather down the hole for Hillhead this year. A little bit too good, if anything. I as a pasty southerner, I'm very, very careful with that sort of thing. So I had a hat on, shirt up to me, back of my head, and I'm absolutely fine and dandy. But there were a few people suffering. It got mighty, mighty warm. One of the things with Hillhead, if you've never been, one of the things with Hillhead is it's a limestone quarry. So not only have you got the sun coming down that way, it's kind of bouncing up off the ground as well. So there is no escape. Demo Darv, Andy Darwell says, still off work, I'm feeling like crap. Good morning, everyone. We'll get well soon, Andy. I don't know what ails you, but thank you very much indeed for being here, and get well soon, pal. Yes, indeed. Lou Kahn is here. Good morning, Lou. I actually bumped into Lou yesterday with the team at Plantworks. I was at one exhibition talking about another one, because that's how these things happen. Jim Turner says, too bloody good, Andy. They should have Hillhead in March or October. Yes, it was a tad warm. In actual fact, we had a couple of filming duties to perform yesterday afternoon, and we got to the last one, and it really did feel like we'd had a day. Really did. Chris Ford, I was hoping to meet up with Chris, but he bailed as well, because he's laid up as well. Morning, Chris. Thank you for being here. Andy Darvell's got a nasty virus, gone through the family. I got it last. Always the way. Morning all from Royal Preston Hospital. Wow. We do have some sickness here, don't we? Let's have a look. Dan Cullen says that's 2 years on the trot. They've had it blinding hot. Yeah, indeed. Hillhead looked a fantastic show. I'll be showing you more about it in just a moment. Fantastic to see young Jordan Nishaw doing his very first demo as a driver for Steel Wrist after helping him get on the team through Joe Westman. Well done, Andy. Spreading the love, as always. You look like you're burnt. No, a little bit red around the edges, but you can see that's where the shirt ended. So yeah, there's a little bit, but I was slathered in sun protection, so I didn't do too badly. As I say, finally got to meet Jim Turner. Also got to spend some time with some, and I'm not going to call them influencers, but let's just to spend a bit of time with a few content creators. And this is something that Steve Williamson and I discuss on a fairly regular basis. It seems that these influencer content creator types fall into two categories. There are those over there, and then there are those that I got to hang out with. I met up with Martin Johansson of Norwegian Earth Mover fame. I got to meet up with Garvin over at Mostly Diggers, Chris McGuinness from Awesome Earth Movers, Ben Wade, Ben the operator, and there was somebody else there as well. I can't remember who it was, but me and Fred as well. And do you know what we did for the best part of, I don't know, half an hour? We just told each other how good we were. There was no trying to stab each other in the back, none of that kind of thing. Just all very pleasant. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Gary Muirhead says, is the goodie bag full to the brim? The goodie bag is empty. And I think I've figured out why that is the case. That's 2 shows that I've come back from with nothing. Literally nothing at all. In the past, when I used to go as a pure journalist, you'd go along and, people would they'd wine you and dine you, and they'd offer you gifts in the hope that you would go away and write nice things about them. Well, now, because we're doing some paid work with some of the manufacturers, because they want to share our audience, because they're doing that, they don't seem to believe that gifts are the way to go. So we've called on and I'm not pointing fingers here, but let me think: JCB, Liebherr, Hitachi, Hyundai, Komatsu, Lugong, XCMG, Sany, Sunward, Volvo, all of those, nothing at all. So I'm afraid I have, and Dan Cullen says, not even a few hats, not even that. Gondrong over on Instagram, who's all the way from Indonesia, says, hello, sir, nice to meet you. I'm from Indonesia. Good morning. Good to meet you too. Yeah, really sorry about the lack of gifts, but that's the way it is, I'm afraid. I've just had a message from Anders over on, is that Anders Rick or is it Rick Anders? I can never remember. From Hammerglass. I would like to talk to you about Hammerglass in the very near future, maybe at the end of the show. We are going to show you some stuff from Hammerglass, because you know how a lot of you, if you're behind the wheels or behind the levers of a machine, you do have a degree of influence with your bosses about the way that machines are spec'd and kitted out and that kind of thing. When you've seen the video that we're going to show you, probably early next week, I would guess, I would strongly urge you to go to your boss and say, excuse me, I would like some Hammerglass in my machine, if you would be so kind. I mean, what are we, 742 shows into this? I do not ever endorse a product, because I'm not equipped to do so. I can't say that a Komatsu excavator is better than a Cat. I can't say that a Liebherr dozer is better than a Komatsu. I can't do that because I'm not in a position. I went to the Hammerglass stand yesterday at Hillhead, and they had a cab with Hammerglass in the front, and they had a sledgehammer, and they were inviting members of the audience and the visitors to try to break it. Now you look at me. I mean, I was going to say I'm 6 stone soaking wet. That's not true, because I'm carrying a bit too much weight. But yet, I'm not what you would call a particularly strong guy. While we were stood there, a guy arrived, and I kid you not, his back was about the size of 2 of mine. This guy was a beast. Muscles, he was wearing a vest, muscles on muscles. Picked up a sledgehammer, and he beat the living crap out of this cab. He scratched the cab, or he scratched the surface of the glass, and that was it. And more than that, and this is the bit that blew my mind, if you could see that there was scratches on the outside of the cab because it'd been hit with a steel sledgehammer. You'd expect there to be scratches, but run your hand up the inside of the cab, not a thing, not a speck, not a chip, nothing. It was absolutely phenomenal. As I say, I'm not being paid to say this. I am not endorsing any products anywhere else. But having watched that demonstration, I really would urge you, go have a word with your boss and get them to really take a very, very close look at it, because it is a stunning piece of technology. It's a polycarbonate, and I know some of you will have experienced polycarbonate screens in the past, and they used to go yellow and milky and cloudy, and they were horrible. This thing, different thing entirely. There you are. I remember Dan Cullen doing his best with a sledgehammer, trying his best at Scott Plant to smash it. It doesn't budge, does it? Does not budge. Well, that, in actual fact, that's the weird thing. It does. You can see it flex. We put a GoPro camera on the wing mirror of this imitation cab to actually see the impact, and you can see the glass actually dents, but it doesn't go anywhere. It really is something a bit special. Dan Cullen says, saw him at Scott Plant, fantastic idea at Hammerglass. So yeah, we've already got one convert. Jim Turner says, great to meet you and Fred. Would have been nice to have met Garvin. Should have had the crack with Lou Carney. Sorry, Lou, but you were busy talking. Lou is always busy talking, to be perfectly honest with you. Let's have a look. Lol, like a bunch of carrion crows awaiting any tasty morsel that comes along. If Mark had any goodies, I'm pretty sure we would all be the first to know. Yeah, I am. I think what I'm going to have to do, I'm going to have to start making it part of the deal when we're working with some of these brands, because it would be lovely to come back from shows and give you some stuff. Because I'm listen, I'm well aware of the fact that you don't get to go to as many of these events as I do. So yes, I would love to share the love, but I came back. I mean, that's it. That's what I brought back. That's my name badge. That's it. That's all I brought back. Oh, there was one other thing I brought back. A big cut on the top of my head. Yeah. I can share with you some advice. Probably won't apply to very many of you, but I'll share the advice nonetheless. If you are climbing into the cab of a 97-ton Hyundai excavator whilst speaking to a camera, watch your head. Because if you don't, you whack it on the roof or you whack it on the door frame. And the bizarre thing was I really, really clobbered one of those, made my teeth whack together, absolutely clobbered my head. Finished my line because, I am a true professional. I finished my lines, came out, got off the machine and said to Fred, I've really hit my bloody head. Took my baseball cap off and I was convinced I was going to have a handful of blood. Put my hand to my head, nothing at all. So Fred obviously thought I was exaggerating. We went about our business. We got back to the car, 6 hours later, took my baseball cap off, put my hand through my hair. Oh, there was blood. There was blood. It just didn't arrive immediately. Yeah. How was the digs? If that's aimed at me, the digs were lovely. Yeah, we could have walked to the show in about 10 minutes. We stayed right in the heart of Buxton, a little Airbnb, 2 up, 2 down. Fred's bed was a bit squeaky, but apart from that, all good. Jim Turner, you should have interrupted me. I would have loved a chat. It wouldn't have been just a chat, though. Jim can talk. Oh, Jim can talk. Really can. And really good stuff. Yeah, I hope he got to meet a few of the JCB guys, because some of the stuff that he was telling me, some of the ideas he's had, well worth a listen, I would say. Jim Turner says, I promise next time I see you, I'll definitely introduce myself. Be sure to do that. Right, okay, enough of this. I did say I was going to show you Hillhead, and I'm going to do that in just a moment. So without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road when I found the right button to do precisely that. Just popping back very, very quickly to my talk of Hammerglass. Hammerglass are actually watching us over on Instagram, so good morning to them. I did actually speak to them yesterday about the idea of coming on the show and talking about the product live. So I'm going to let them get back to their respective homes around the world before we do it. So in the next couple of weeks, we will have Hammerglass right here on the show to talk about the product, and you can ask questions and all that good stuff. In addition to that, I don't know quite how well you can see that. Not very well at all, but my mate David Wiley, author, journalist, and everything else, he's got a new book out, another new book called Earth Movers in the USA, Australia, and Europe. Comes out in about a week's time. Spoke to David yesterday in the press office up at Hillhead as well, and he is going to come on the show as well. So you'll be able to find out about his book, which, if anybody's ever seen a David Wiley book, imagine War and Peace on steroids. That's pretty much what David does. Huge tomes, and the new book will cost £38.50 plus post and packaging, but it will be £38.50 well spent. As I say, I'm going to get David Wiley on the show in the not too distant future. But in the meantime, it is Thursday, the 27th of June. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition. For today's in today's show, for the love of Hillhead, we're taking an up-close look at the latest track carriers from Takeuchi. Ausa unleashes its latest rough terrain forklifts, and we're swamp logging Yeah, swamp logging. Ever been swamp logging? I certainly haven't, but we're going to do so with John Deere. Plus, we're closing our show with a very satisfied Hyundai customer. But before we get to all of that, we do have the small matter of today's mystery machine. Yeah, can you guess today's mystery machine? For it looks like that. Give you a couple of seconds to take a look at that. We are looking for a make and a very specific model because, well, frankly, it is a very specific model. If you've got any suggestions on what that might be, then please let us know in the chat. Who's come up there? Let me take that away because I've got a comment here from Jim. Sorry, I was rattling on, Mark. Just machines and agriculture are my favourite subject. On those subjects, I've definitely got more rattle than a bag of spanners. Yes, he has got more rattle, but it all made sense. You know, sometimes people start to tell you about their ideas and you feel your eyes glazing over. Not with Jim. I basically found myself for about 20 minutes just stood there nodding, thinking, he's right, you know. He is absolutely right. Mystery machine. Dan Cullen has gone for the JCB 145X. It's not quite, but you're very, very close. Very, very close. Keep the guesses coming in. I tell you what, let me give you a little bit more. There you are. That's what you're working with. Chris Ford has gone for the mystery machine. He's a JCB 370X. It's not. Jim Turner has gone for the JCB 9-ton 9-ton JCB MIDI. I tell you what, Jim, of all people, you should get this because I know you've seen one. Jim has gone for the 140X. It's not, but you're close. Demo Darv has gone for the JS130. It is not. You're obviously the color scheme has given it away in terms of which manufacturer. I think you're all on the case with that, but we just need a specific model. And I can tell you it's quite new. Demo Darv, Andy Darvell has just gone for the JCB 130X. It's not. The 131 says Jim Turner. Nope. The 220X hydrogen. It is none of those things, but keep the guesses coming in. If it's any clue, first outing at Hillhead, it's that new. So please keep the guesses coming in. Now, speaking of Hillhead, as we sort of were, I know what I was going to do. I was going to remind you of the question of the day. Now, I can't play the thing that I normally do. No, I can. I can bypass that, actually. Let me remind you of today's question of the day very, very quickly. Yeah, come back to the mystery machine, or come back to the question of the day, excuse me, in just a moment, but I can tell you we already have two winners, and it's a dead heat. They both came through at 10.19. Gary Muirhead reckons it's a JCB 145 XR. Mark Whiting reckons it's a JCB 145 XR. And they're both absolutely right. Here we are. This is what it looks like. As soon as I can add it to the stage, there you go. That's the new JCB 145 XR. We've got an interview with James McMillan coming on that in the next couple of days. Very smart new machine. Lots and lots of new kit over on JCB. Bearing in mind, I was up at JCB fairly recently with the 370X and various other bits and pieces. I think there was probably half a dozen new products on the JCB stand yesterday. So, yeah. Well worth a visit. If you're up there today, and I know Ken Hatcher is on his way, I don't suppose for one moment he'll be listening into this, but if he's on his way, make sure you head to JCB. Very, very good display. Now, Chris Ford, it's like you're a mind reader. I mentioned reminding you of the question of the day, which I've already done. Gary Muirhead's question of today is, what is your greatest fear for the future? And apparently, Chris Ford's greatest fear of the future is exactly the same as mine. Question today, getting old, not being able to do things for myself, but it's coming. I've mentioned this before, not the last Baumer, but the Baumer before. I'd just come back after having a burst appendix, and I was fairly sure I was not coming back. It absolutely destroyed me. I was there for a week, and by the time I was leaving, I was literally dead on my feet. Turns out it was just kind of the hangover from the burst appendix. And the next Bauma I did without a problem at all. If you've ever been to Hillhead, obviously it's in a quarry, so you have to walk down the whole road to get into the pit where the actual show takes place. And walking down is an absolute doddle. It just feels like a gentle slope, but by the time you come to leave, it's like you're scaling the north face of the Eiger. It's a very, very steep slope, or it feels very steep. It feels like it's got steeper during the day. And every time I go back to Hillhead, and I've been, I don't know, 13, 14 times now, every time I go back, it feels like that whole road just gets a bit steeper. And I was walking up it yesterday, bearing in mind it was an exceptionally hot day. Both Fred and I had, backpacks on with multiple cameras, tripods, other bits and pieces. So, heavy bag and everything else. And I was walking up and I was quite literally kind of doing an internal audit of my body. My knees were hurting. Is that just because it's a hot day and it's a steep slope, or should I be worried? My back hurts. Is that a sign of passing, the passage of time, or is it because I'm carrying a heavy rucksack? So conscious of it yesterday, and the thought that one day I might not be able to do that. And just as a small aside, I've got to piece it together. But I recorded purely audio, just a purely audio. I was just walking around, just talking to my phone, stream of consciousness. I'm looking at, here's the thing I've just heard about, and I'm going to piece it together. But one of the things that really stood out for me, there was a company literally right up at the very entrance to the show who were hiring out mobility scooters. Now, a mobility scooter going down that incline to get into the show, that's pretty hairy anyway. But I saw 4 or 5, and I saw one old guy in particular. I mean, I reckon this guy was 80 plus, and he had made the journey to Hillhead. He had got himself a mobility scooter, and he was riding around looking at the equipment. That, to my mind, I mean, that testament to Hillhead for allowing that to happen and for helping him to get around. But doesn't that tell you everything about the passion that people have for this industry? It's like Jim Turner said earlier, this is his love, agriculture and construction equipment. That's his love. And this guy, probably long since retired, I would imagine, not particularly mobile, but he still made the journey, and he was still going around looking at the diggers. I have to say, I don't want to do that, but I have to admit, I do admire him for it. Seen a picture of it at JCB with a steel wrist on it. I think the display machine had a steel wrist on it as well. I feel for you with a lot of cameras and rucksack full of stuff. I like to travel light, so I had the bare minimum with me. Yeah, and unfortunately, because when we're doing interviews, we're sometimes using 2 and even 3 cameras. So, and cameras, by the time you've got the batteries in there and you've got the battery packs and everything else, they are quite heavy. Both the tripods that we use, because you want the tripod to be super stable. We've got lightweight tripods. There's probably one fairly close to hand. Yeah, we've got that. That's as light as anything. I carry that around for weeks. But to give you the stability to do the really good job, we've got the heavier tripods as well. So by the end of the day, you really are feeling it. But I can't complain. We had a great time, and I'm about to show you exactly how we had a great time. But keep those answers coming in. What is your greatest fear for the future? I'll come back to that. But first of all, we need a bit of this. Yeah, we do have a whole heap actually of films from Hillhead, product focus, interviews, equipment in action, and everything else. But we didn't get back to quite late last night. So in order to react as quickly as we possibly can with all things Hillhead related, we've put together a very, very quick snapshot of what the face looked like. So if you went, this will jog your memory and make you feel all teary-eyed. If you didn't go, this is what you missed. It's been 2 years in the making, but Hillhead 2024 is finally here, and I am here where all the action takes place. This is the face. I'll pop back to Hillhead in just a moment. Had a comment over on Instagram from McAlpine Brandon, which may well be Brandon McAlpine. I'm not entirely sure. But greatest fear is being too poor to explore. I've always wanted to operate and excavate. Yeah, imagine being too poor to explore. I know some people choose not to travel, and that's well within their rights. But yeah, the ability to actually get out, even if it's just your own country, to get out and about and see stuff, I think that's a good thing. Now, Hillhead. This is actually part of the podcast that I will be throwing out at some point, my stream of consciousness, walking around. There was tech there. There was unquestionably tech there. There was reversing systems, and there was GPS and all the things, and people detection systems. All that you would expect. All that you would expect. But you know what made Hillhead really, really, really good? It was primarily, almost exclusively, about the heavy iron rather than the software. That face that you just saw there was just blanketed with heavy iron. There was no software systems, and it was just pure heavy metal. And if that's the kind of thing you're into, which frankly I am, it really was, and it was so refreshing to see it. Certainly the last Con Expo that I attended and the last Baumer I came away from, I did come back thinking the technology is taking over, and I'm a technology lover. I love a bit of tech, and I do think it contributes to productivity, contributes to safety, and all of the kind of things that we need to talk about. But just being presented with a whole heap of heavy iron doing its thing in its natural environment, see, that's me. That really is a bit of me, and I have to say, hats off to Hillhead themselves for sticking to what they do best. Yeah, I'm sure there is a temptation to open up, halls and pavilions and just fill them with tech suppliers and everything else. But the absolute truth is, and they know their audience. Everybody that goes to Hillhead does precisely the same thing. You come down the whole road, you chuck a right, and you go straight to the face, because that's where the action is. And last year was a bit disjointed because Caterpillar and Finning, in their infinite wisdom, decided not to actually show off equipment. They went tech focused, so there was kind of a gap, and there wasn't much in the way of Caterpillar. This time, the demos were just non-stop action. Jim will back me up. He was there. Absolutely fantastic stuff. McAlpine Brandon, or Brandon McAlpine, says, if you have any openings or can sponsor me, I would love to be a project or grow to my full potential. I need something more, sir. Can't help you, I'm afraid, my friend. This is what I do. I don't do construction. I don't do demolition. I just babble on about it. So can't help you, but good luck with your future. What do we got here? Was a bit bigger this year. Do you know, here's the thing, okay? So it was a bit bigger. They've moved the face back a little bit, and it seemed a little bit wider. They put another aisle in down the right-hand side as you're looking towards the face. There was another aisle in there, and that was full of exhibitors, including a couple that we met up with. So I'll be featuring those in the very near future. But it was weird, and I don't know whether it was because the show was a little more spread out. The car park I mean, when we had the drone up in the air, you could see it very, very clearly. There's a lower and an upper car park. There's also an overflow car park. The car parks were heaving to the point where the overflow car park was overflowing. That's how many people were there. And yet, in the aisles, didn't seem that many. And yet, we were on the JCB stand, where when I met up with Jim, you could barely move because it was wall-to-wall people. We had exactly the same at Hyundai, exactly the same at Demolition. We had exactly the same at Liebherr. As I say, I don't know. Maybe it was the weather. Maybe people were, rather than being in the aisles, it was right, where's the next bit of shade? And maybe that's what they were heading for. But you could look up the aisles and think, there's a lot of people here, but not wall-to-wall. Get on the stands. Good God almighty, you could barely breathe. That's what it was like. Jim Turner says, I really hate the way the face and benches are set up. Don't get me wrong, it's a great scene, but terrible to actually see how good individual machines are. It would be better as a static display, but have the benches all around the edge with different machines, manufacturers working in their own areas. Then we'll be able to see the pros and cons of different machines and manufacturers. I think it was a bit more like that in the late 80s or early 90s. It was, but let's be absolutely honest. Who can blame the manufacturers from wanting to be a part of that demonstration? And Jim is absolutely right. The way that the face used to work was, and it generally started over in the right hand side with Caterpillar. Caterpillar would do their thing, and then they'd stop, and Liebherr would start, and then they'd stop, and somebody else would start, and so it goes. With this, every half an hour or so, all hell broke loose. There was machines on machines on machines. One other thing that and again, this is something from the podcast that I recorded. I don't even know if I even bother releasing it, to be perfectly honest. But one of the things from the podcast, I was sat there on a bench watching the demonstration, and right up the top, it was, I'm not entirely sure of the order, excuse me, but it went something like Lugong, Sany, Sunwald, XCMG. So the very tippity top of the face, entirely Chinese. If you go back 2, possibly 3 Hillheads, there would have been none whatsoever. And there they were, tippity top. Now, I'm not saying they get top billing. That's just where they chose to be. But lots and lots of Chinese. And I realise that we have an ongoing investigation into anti-dumping and all of those kind of things, and they may well be hit with tariffs and what have you. But as it stands at the moment, they're here, and I don't think they're going anywhere. So get used to it. Chris Ford says, if I could hobble more than 50 yards, I'd jump in the car and go today. But it took me 7 minutes to get out of the car Tuesday night. The only good thing is it's easing up, or the painkillers are working. It's surprising how a muscle strain or tear can bugger you up. You ever hear the story about the guy that was a British guy who was planning to climb Everest? Supremely fit, as you would be if you're going to go climb the biggest mountain in the world, supremely fit, got to base camp, and somebody handed him, what are they called? A chapati, because obviously, local cuisine and everything, handed him a chapati, and it had flour on it, and he inhaled some of the flour, which made him sneeze, put his back out, climbers off. Been years in the making, one sneeze, game over. So I feel your pain. Well, I don't actually feel your pain, but you know what I'm saying. Get well soon, Chris. But rest up. We will bring you the best of Hillhead, regardless of whether you get there yourself. Trust me, we've got you covered. Now let's have a bit of this. Track carriers. I like a track carrier. It's one of the few bits of equipment that I can drive fairly problem-free. There's a new one from Takeuchi. It looks like this.
Hey, I'm Lee Padgett with Takeuchi. Today we're going to be taking a look at the features and benefits of the TCR 50-2. With an operating weight of 14,440 pounds, 118 horsepower, A max tractive effort of 8,115 pounds and a 2.7 yard bucket capacity, the TCR 50-2 is a versatile, well-balanced dump carrier that excels in a wide range of applications. At the center of the TCR 50-2 is a purpose-built, fully welded one-piece box frame design with corner gussets that provide superior strength and rigidity. Moving across mixed terrain is made easy with the TCR 50-2 with its ground clearance of 17 inches and a gradability of up to 30 degrees. The all-steel removable brush guard provides exceptional protection for both the front of the machine and its LED lighting package. The TCR 50-2's 18-inch bar-style track aids in better flotation and rides on a bogie-style undercarriage featuring double-flange track rollers for outstanding ride quality. This makes the TCR 50-2 less susceptible to detracking while extending track life by distributing the carrier's weight across the track surface. All rollers are permanently sealed and have metal face seals to prohibit damage from dirt and other contaminants. Double reduction planetary drives deliver exceptional traction force to power the machine through the most demanding conditions. Another unique feature on the TCR 50-2 is Takeuchi's hydraulic self-adjusting track system. This not only makes track tensioning easy, but it also extends the machine's track life. This system utilizes a hydraulic tensioning cylinder to adjust the track to the proper tension. To properly tension the track, activate your high-speed travel button and rotate the tracks. The TCR 50-2's dump bed will rotate 90 degrees to both the left and right sides, making it extremely versatile when operating on job sites with limited space requirements. Dual dump cylinders and oversized ring gear provide the power to handle even the heaviest of loads. Remote grease points save time and simplify daily maintenance of the working equipment, while the bed's safety lock can be put into place for service of the hydraulic pump and hoses. Rearview camera is standard equipment on the TCR 50-2, allowing the operator to see behind the dump bed in any position throughout the rotation cycle. Daily maintenance checkpoints and service access are easily accessible on the right side of the machine through the lockable overhead service doors. Ground level service access includes fuel water separator, dual element air cleaner, fuel filter, fuel fill, def fill, and battery. Topside access includes oil fill and dipstick, DPF and SCR, cooling module, cooling fan, and engine. Additionally, large, removable belly pans allow for clean out and access to the bottom side of the engine compartment. At Takeuchi, we believe that a comfortable operator will be a more productive operator. A large side entry door, roll-up front window, and sliding side windows allow for work to be performed with the cabin open or closed. The TCR 50-2's interior features an intuitive set of rocker switches, a 5.7-inch color monitor to view machine vitals, rear-view camera display, and 2-speed travel with foot throttle. Pilot controls are low effort and precise, reducing operator fatigue while increasing productivity. The TCR 50-2 features Takeuchi Fleet Management Telematics, or TFM. TFM remotely connects users to their Takeuchi machines and provides alerts and machine information including location, performance, and maintenance data, giving insights into where and how the equipment is being used. I want to thank you today for taking a closer look at the TCR 50-2. For more information on this machine or any other Takeuchi product, please visit our website at takeuchi-us.com or visit your local dealer for a demo today.
Dan Cullens just asked a question. I saw the same companies at the face, no new ones from 2 years ago. He's talking about Hillhead. It kind of depends how you look at it. XCMG wouldn't have been there 2 years ago because I don't think they were actually present properly in the UK at that time. So they were there. They were new. Also, Devellon 2 years ago would have been Doosan. So in terms of name, but ultimately it comes down to who pays the money. I'm sure that you pay for the privilege of being on the face, and if that's the case, well, it's going to be the same big companies again. One thing that was interesting, though, those that Hillhead, the far end of the show, the face is usually where all of the cats, the Liebherrs, the Komatsus, that's where they do their bit. Round the side tends to be the crushing area. You've got lots of crushers and screens and that kind of thing. This time, Volvo, or should I say SMT GB, chose to actually put some of their machines on display around there. So obviously they got the brand new F-Series that aren't called the F-Series, but the F-Series excavators, which were there in fine force and everything else. But also they had both electric and the 230 electric. They also had one of their hybrid machines there as well. And because they weren't on the face, you were that much closer to them. And you'll see when we do the Volvo video, you'll see I could almost reach out and touch the electric 230. I didn't, because that would have been really bad form. But it was that close you could almost touch it. Silent. But it was a lovely bit of rest for my ears at a very noisy show. Noisy for all the right reasons, but yeah. I had a great chat with Mr. Williams, and he said, no matter what show you go, there is actually no new incentives or something different out there. Though we did say something not seen yet. Yeah, it's true. It is true. Technology-wise, as I say, came back from the last Bauma, from the last ConExpo, buzzing about technology, but not seeing anything particularly groundbreaking in terms of taking equipment in a different direction, with one exception. And I hate to say it. Hammerglass. Bearing in mind, the desire for safety and everything else, particularly in the extractive industry, so mining and quarrying, where you could potentially have rock coming through the cab and injuring people, but demolition as well. And one of the things when you see the video, you'll see that the team at Hammerglass were wearing t-shirts, kind of old American baseball style t-shirts. And I think the slogan was "Get rid of the grid," because they were talking about if you're an operator, particularly in something like demolition, where you've got a cab guard on, you're basically in prison. You're looking through bars. Well, for one thing, looking through bars not particularly good for your visibility. That's not a problem with Hammerglass. But also, cab guards are mostly gaps. You might have a bar, but then there's a gap of a couple of inches, and then you've got another bar and gap. So there are, if you've got fly rock kicking about the place or bits of debris falling off of a building or whatever it might be and bouncing, and trust me, I know firsthand that material bounces. I've got a full-size socket to prove it. There are gaps. There are gaps that a piece of steel or a piece of rock or a piece of concrete could punch through and hurt, possibly even kill the operator. Not with Hammerglass. There's a product there that will basically, and again, you'll see it when we come to do the video, but do yourself a favor, go over to the YouTube channel of Hammerglass and have a look at some of the tests that they've put their product through. It's phenomenal. And it's one of those, I don't know how much it costs. I didn't ask. And I'm sure it comes at a price premium, probably a hefty price premium. But if you are specifying a machine for an application or a sector where there is likely to be rock and concrete and steel flying about the place, why would you not? Why would you not? There's lots of products. I like that brand of excavator, but I also like this one. I like that one as well. I understand that, but with this, surely a no-brainer. If you want to safeguard the well-being of your operators, why would you not? So, in answer to Dan's question, did I see anything new? Yeah, I saw Hammerglass, and I have to say, I'm mightily impressed. There was another one as well, and we've done a video on this as well. We did feature about a year ago prototype of an electric hydraulic. That made no sense. An electric breaker, like a hydraulic breaker, but electric powered. And I remember at the time I said it, and I know a lot of you guys said it as well. What is the point? Because a hydraulic breaker doesn't really create much in the way of emissions. It does create noise emissions, and an electric version of that is still steel hitting rock or concrete, so it still creates that. The bit that we all overlooked, and again, there is a video coming on this, the bit we all overlooked is the infinite controllability of anything electric. I'm speaking to the guy that came, or one of the guys that came up with the idea of the Lecatech electric breaker. I've got to get used to saying electric breaker. And he said the control on it is so precise, you can set it to say on every 10th blow of the steel, make it a hard one. You can do 9 at the same rate, same percussive impact and everything else, and then on the 10th one, give it a wallop, and the system will do that. All controllable from within the cab. Very, very smart, I have to say. Chris Ford, hammer glass sounds a godsend for me. We deal with a lot of high tensile wire, which certainly finds the gaps in the window guards. Do you remember when I was talking about my accident? Not that my accident matters. I'm not even going to dwell on that. But after I was hit in the noggin, the last time I was hit in the noggin, not this time, but the last time I was hit in the noggin by a low-flying brick, we had a lot of emails and phone calls and text messages and what have you from other people that had exactly the same thing. And I had one came in from the US of A, and a guy basically was taking down a building, and debris hit the ground, and a piece of steel, only about so big, but a piece of steel shot out from the building, landed, shot out, and it actually punctured underneath. So the cab guard, if you imagine that's the cab, the guard ended there, and this piece of steel punched through there, and it punched through the glass and below the cab guard, hit one of his foot pedals, and went straight up and hit him under the chin and broke his jaw. For one thing, I think it proves that demolition debris defies all the laws of physics. But another thing is, cab guard didn't help. I think they're a fantastic thing, and I certainly wouldn't recommend anybody try demolition without one. Totally in complete agreement with the idea of a demolition cab guard. However, there are occasions, and as I say, I've heard about it firsthand, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that, where they don't necessarily stop everything. Hammer glass, plain and simple, does. It really is as simple as that. Impact protection for your operator's cab, all important and crucial here in the UK, vital that it meets all necessary legislative requirements. Many do not. Yeah, now, therein lies an issue. And I don't know, maybe Mick may be able to enlighten us on this, because I don't know the answer. But one of the things that did occur to me is if you're a professional demolition company and you're working in a demolition environment, you have your ROPS, your FOPS, you also have your steel guard, the cage around the machine. Is that a legal requirement, or could you A, replace it with something like hammer glass, or could you B, have it with hammer glass as additional protection? I don't actually know the requirements on that. I don't know whether the HSE have looked at hammer glass and given it their thumbs up or their thumbs down, or whether they've not looked at it at all. Don't actually know. Brandon McAlpine says, do you actually own your own excavator? I don't. I'm a journalist. I'm a writer, an author, a raconteur, and a wit, a cad and a bounder, but I am not an excavator operator. Nobody in their right mind would allow me anywhere near an excavator. Thanks for the question. That's over on Instagram, by the way. Bloody coverage here, says Dan Cullen. Yeah, listen, I've spent 2 days with zero Wi-Fi. Zero, absolutely zero. Got back to the digs. Super fast Wi-Fi, lovely, but no use at all during the day, to the point where I'm fairly sure I missed a couple of appointments with people trying to get hold of me while I was down the hole and just literally couldn't get hold of me. But there we are. Let's crack on, shall we?
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
I'm not entirely sure we've ever featured rough terrain forklifts on this show before, so I want to put that right. Here's Ausa and their rough terrain forklifts. Chris Ford rightly says, Chris Ford rightly says two things, actually. Rough trade fixed mast forklifts all but disappeared due to the telehandler. They have, to the point where I actually can't remember the last time I saw one in action. Genuinely can't remember. Dan Cullers reminded me, don't forget to try custard and porridge. I am going to do that, and I'm going to do it on camera, I've decided. I need to go and source the relevant ingredients, the custard and the porridge. I'll set up a camera, and I will do it right there on camera. Not live, because if it's horrible and I'm violently ill, that would end the show. But I'm going to do that. Chris Ford also says, nobody in their right mind would want to own an excavator. Here's the thing. Brandon McAlpine, would you consider following me? Actually fascinated with equipment. More than happy to do so. As soon as the show's over, I will reach for the phone and I will follow you back. Not a problem at all. Talking to somebody who will remain nameless. And you know there's all this talk about Chinese excavators and anti-dumping and tariff duties and all of those things. Talking to a guy who reckons, he couldn't offer me any more detail on this, but apparently there is a factory now in China that produces excavators. I realise that sounds like I'm stating the bleeding obvious because of Sany and Sunwood and XCMG and Lugon and everything else. But this factory isn't owned by one of those, and it doesn't actually produce its own excavators. The word is there is a company out there. There is a factory, a fully equipped factory, and you could basically send it your designs and your details and say, I would like 100 of this 20-ton class excavator built to my specifications. And that factory will do precisely that. It reminded me, and I'm sure I've mentioned this on the show before, you know, there's this major YouTuber, I think he's the biggest YouTuber in the world, a guy called Mr. Beast. Jimmy, somebody or other. But yeah, Mr. Beast, he has the Beast Burger, which is now available pretty much worldwide. But he doesn't actually own a restaurant, doesn't own a cafe, doesn't own a food truck or anything like that. Basically, what he does, he takes his recipe down to the last detail, not just the recipe, but also the way it's served and the way it's prepared and everything else. And you as a local cafe, a local burger joint, but also as an Indian restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, a Thai restaurant, an Italian restaurant, if you have cooking facilities, you can basically franchise or have a franchise for the Beast Burger. So with things like, you know, Uber Eats and Deliveroo and what have you, I can order right here. I mean, Jimmy Donaldson, I think his name is, but Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast is based over in the States. I can order a Beast Burger here, right here in Surrey, and I can get one delivered in about 15 minutes flat, because there are a couple of local eateries that are selling those. So imagine that. Imagine the fact that there is a factory out there. It's not owned by a manufacturer or an equipment manufacturer. It's just an unbranded factory that takes your designs and your specifications and spits out machines. What does that do for the market? What does that do for the market? Mick Norton says impact protection for cabs and guards should be designed to meet and exceed the FOP standard BS EN ISO 3449 and ISO 10262. Not entirely sure what any of that means, but it sounds like there is a set of rules in there. Chris Ford, I once had a following. They followed me into the alley and beat the living daylights out of me. I'm always slightly nervous of that myself. Let's have a look who we got. Anders from Hammerglass is actually watching. Apparently, I think he's watching from Hillhead. Lord alone knows how he's got a signal, but he's watching from Hillhead. Good morning. Give my regards to Katharina and the team. Yes, I think it's only an NFDC requirement. I wonder if that's the case. I mean, you certainly do see machines on demolition sites without cab guards. I've always assumed that was just not following the rules, basically. But maybe the rules aren't as widespread as I thought. Don't know. I need to do a bit of digging on that. And maybe the guys at Hammerglass may know the answer. More to talk about in a future show, but here we go. Have you ever been swamp logging? Nope, me either. In fact, up until this morning, I didn't even know that swamp logging was even a thing. Turns out it is. And if you're going to go swamp logging, you want yourself a bit of John Deere to go with it.
I had 2 crews in pine logging, and I was a heavy producer. I was working a lot, and there was a swamp logger, and they needed a low ground pressure swamp crew for pine. And I went over there and did it. And the pine market seemed to slow down a little, and I had a lot of hardwood guys approach me about me going, strictly real swamp logging. So far, it's been a good decision. You know how logging is. That can change tomorrow, but hopefully we'll keep it going forward. There's a handful of us, and there's some really good guys in this region that does it. This industry of swamp logging, if it's not generational, it's almost impossible to get into. This life is a grind, and generation to generation, it seems that there's not many grinders left. So I love it. It's in my blood, and hopefully we'll just continue to grow and everything will continue to get better and better. Some people will call me crazy, but it's just part of who I am. It was in the year about 2013, and that's where I bought my first John Deere. I bought a John Deere 843L buncher. We had such great success with the cutter that we just continuously, went green. I think I was the first one in the state with a 948L. That machine was just a beast of a machine, and we just had really good success with everything that we've got from John Deere, and they've taken really good care of us. And the service guys, I can't tip my hat enough to them. They go above and beyond to get me in and out. They really take care of us. They understand the struggles of swamp logging. They understand this is how we make our life, and they do everything we need them to do. My main thing is service. The way John Deere takes care of me and my family, they kind of make me feel like I am family. John Deere's machines are phenomenal. I really can't see me doing anything without them. I wouldn't be where I am today without John Deere. My future is looking great. It just comes down to working hard, being smart, and not giving up. I love logging, I do. The reason I'm here every day is, for the family. So, I'm gonna make sure I always try to leave them in a better shape than they were the day before. And that's when I get up in the morning, that's what I try to do, be better than I was yesterday.
Now, according to Chris Ford, who knows about these things, Bobby Goodson featured on TV swamp logging. Looked a lot of hassle. It does look a lot of hassle, but then I guess it's worth it because there's money to be made. But yeah, featured on TV. And yet, as I say, until this morning, I'd never even heard the term swamp logging. Need to get out more, maybe. But yeah, thank you very much indeed for that, Chris. We've got one final film to bring you. So let me roll a bit of this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
If you were here at the beginning of the show, you will know that I'm currently sporting a large scab on top of my head, thanks to a close encounter with the roof or the door frame of a Hyundai 97-ton machine, the HL1000, or as we called it while we were there, the HL1 OO. Yes, the OO. I had an encounter with the door frame, cut my head, hurt a lot, but I'm a brave soldier. And just to prove that I don't hold a grudge, here's some Hyundai.
I'd say Hyundai is the best brand we've bought. Obviously, we used a lot of case machines before we started using Hyundais, and I'd say Hyundais are better, more comfortable, more powerful, more reliable machines. I'm Tom Russell. I'm a director of Cedar Russell Limited. My dad, Charlie Russell, started the business 28 years ago. We built from in buying one tipper to what we have now, 35 wagons, 40 odd machines, 5 crushers, 6 screeners. Construction's our main sector. We've recently moved into crushing and screening. We're a tip hire company. We run aggregates around the northeast, do a lot of muck away, site clearance, small part of demolition. From our total fleet, we've probably got about 25 of our machines working on this site. There's 3 crushers working near enough full time down here and 4 screeners. So we moved over to Hyundai around 2 years ago when we bought an old loading shovel, and our local Hyundai dealer Taylor Braithwaite looked after us. We did use other excavators from other dealers for around the last 4 years before that, but we just found Hyundai's the most reliable, probably the most efficient on fuel, best backup from the dealer. Well, our company colours are red, they always have been for the last 28 years, and that was our first factory ordered digger, so as we buy factory ordered machines, we're going to start buying a red fleet of excavators now. To run a fleet of Hyundai excavators, they vary from 20 tonners to 50 tonners, with 5 loading shovels. We run 2 machines with magnets, we've got 3 machines on munchers, and then the rest of the machines work on the actual crushers and screeners loading. And yeah, we've got 6 of the new Hyundai's A-series machines. They've been reliable. The operators like using them, they're comfortable, powerful. Taylor and Braithwaite's backups, very good. They've got all the mod cons that an operator want. They've got Bluetooth, very good aircon, comfortable seat. Nobody's complained about any of them. The power mode's very good on the Hyundai machine with crushing and screening. If you're turning over big heaps where you need to work through the heat faster than what normal digging machines would do. Yeah, we've been running Hyundai machines for 2 years and they've had no structural issues. There's been no real major breakdowns. Obviously, there's been the odd thing that Taylor and Braithwaite have been straight out and sorted out. So yeah, I can't find anything wrong with them. Taylor and Braithwaite support's the best support we've had from an excavator dealer. So there's somebody always there to pick up the phone, whether it's a salesman or it's a director or it's a fitter. There's always somebody there to speak to and sort your issue, and if they can't sort your issue over the phone, they're straight out. Yeah, Taylor and Braithwaite definitely understand our business in the fact that everything we've got is always busy, so they work around our downtime rather than having to stand the machine for them to come out to it. It's a brand we know and it's a brand that we've used, so we're just trying to stick with Hyundai.
Building a comfortable tomorrow.
Just had a comment from Dan Cullen, and I can see this from both sides, funnily enough. That'd be great. Not 20 different companies adding this, that, and charge a ransom. I see where he's coming from. So the idea of having one brand supplying all of your equipment, that makes perfect sense to me. One-stop shop. So you have a central location, familiar voice at the end of the phone for parts and service and backup and for sales and all of the things. Flip side of that, all your eggs in one basket. What if your local dealer is not, takes a turn for the worst or something? it's an interesting point. And I will draw on an analogy that is completely unrelated to construction. I don't think they exist anymore. But do you remember the old Little Chef cafes along the roadsides of the UK? I don't know if they were a franchise or exactly the way they worked, but I, having travelled a lot for work and everything else, and for fishing as well, visited a lot of Little Chefs over the years. And the quality of those Little Chefs always hinged upon the local staff. And there's one in particular that I used to go up to Bertram Newton, the CITB training facility, up in Norfolk-ish, over on the Norfolk coast, on a regular basis, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, sometimes even more than that. And there was a Little Chef, maybe 30 miles before I got to Bertram Newton. So I used to crack off really early and then call in there for breakfast, cup of coffee, and then go and finish my journey and go to work. And for years, you'd go in there and the service was fantastic. The quality of the food was fantastic. Everything, it was spotlessly clean. Everything about it was absolutely spot on. And then they changed managers. And I went back once, and it was that piss poor I never went back again. I wonder if you get the same thing with construction equipment dealers. You might have a really good relationship with a dealer. And bearing in mind, I spent a lot of time talking to equipment manufacturers and their dealers over the last few days. And the number of people, I was talking to a young lady who had been at, where was she before? She's with JCB now, but she was with another equipment manufacturer before. So imagine that. Imagine you've built up some rapport with your local salesman or your local parts supplier or whatever it might be, and then they are headhunted by another firm, or they decide to quit, or they retire or whatever, and then you're left with all your eggs in one basket. Brandon says, would it be possible to drill and build a 100-floor deep apartment or office space? Who owns the underground anyways? As far as I know, here in the UK, it's because we are operating with fairly finite space. We do regularly dig down 3, 4, 5 stories, often for car parks rather than actually living quarters, because a bit claustrophobic underground. But as far as I'm aware, if you own the surface, you own what's below it. I think. I've never actually been asked that question before, but I think that's the way it goes. Yes, it was a little expensive in the Little Chef. The Little Thief, as Gary Muirhead calls it, used to love the Olympic breakfast. There's a man with an appetite. Yeah, and along the same lines, the Little Robber's a great place for breakfast if you got a good one. Yeah, and it really was. As I say, because I started going to Little Chefs with my dad, going fishing when I was a kid, and there was a couple on the way to various fishing locations that were really, really good, and there were others just not. And the food was the same, the layout was the same, the tables, the chairs, the menu, everything was the same. But because certain people in the company just couldn't be asked, they were rubbish. Dan Cullen's going back to work. Not a problem at all, Dan. Great to see you and good to be back chatting with you. Have a wonderful day, guys. See you tomorrow. Stay safe and happy. Yeah, do that. Do stay safe and happy. That's a good point to wrap things up, I think. I do need to go and have a look at any responses that we've had to our question of the day. So without further ado, I'm going to roll the outro. Leap Gazelle-like over into the chat, see what you're all saying today. If you can't stick around, then please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. I hope to see you again very, very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I shall return. I will be back with the Craic immediately after this word from MB Crusher, who also were at Hillhead. Morning, Alessia. This is just so you know, Alessia is my second favourite Italian person after Paolo Di Canio. That's a whole other story. But I paid her a visit. Not yesterday, the day before, and I arrived, and she's got a very strange accent. She's Italian. She lives in Italy, but she spent a lot of time over here, so she speaks English with kind of a half Italian, half Cockney accent. And she saw me coming, and she went like this, and she said, "Would you like a kiss, a hug, or a coffee?" I took all three, because that's what you do. I'll be back in a moment. Let's get some music going. There we go. number 14, because that's how we like it. How are we all doing today? I'm not going to bore you any further at the moment with Hillhead, but it really was very, very good. It is, to this day, it remains one of my favourite shows because it's manageable, but also there's an added element now. I think it's sticking to its guns. There is an awful lot of tech in the extractive industries. You've already seen, some of the stuff that they're using for underground mining and quarrying and all of those sort of things. There is some amazing tech, and yet, that show was 99.9% heavy metal, with a bit of tech just sprinkled on top. All your eggs in one basket is okay if it's Caterpillar or Komatsu. There is always the element of continuity of reliance with small family firms, even though their service is second to none. Things happen that are sometimes outside their control. Yeah, absolutely. Is Hyundai not a little bit behind on these big machines as Volvo, Cat, Doosan and Liebherr? I wonder if they've upgraded. Still not my cup of tea in the 360s. Give them a try. And while you're about it, I had a long chat with one of the guys from SMTGB yesterday. We were just sat there in the shade, watching the world go by, enjoying each other's company. And we were talking about all things electric machine. And he actually said, and I'd say exactly the same in response to Dan's question there, if you have never driven an electric machine, go and do it. Go find one. Go to a demonstration, go to an exhibition, go somewhere and drive one. Because I think you'll be a convert, and I would actually say exactly the same. I think it was either the biggest or it was one of the biggest excavators at the show. Was this 1000 from Hyundai, the one that damaged my noggin? And I've been in it. I didn't drive it because it was a static machine and everything else. But I tell you what, everything was where it needed to be. That really, really looked the part, really did. And I mean, bearing in mind, it was facing the PC 950 from Komatsu. All pretty much the same. I wouldn't say they're exactly the same, but as 97-ton excavators go, 100-ton class excavators go, it had everything you want. Let's have a look. 20-ton, worst I ever operated, powerless, even on power mode. Don't think you'd find that with a 97-tonner, to be honest. Was there anything that stood out for you at the show that really surprised you? I'm going to sound like I'm being paid for this. Hammer glass, the Lecatech breaker. Now that I understand the why as well as the how, I think that makes an awful lot of sense. Just the sheer controllability of an electric breaker over a hydraulic breaker. I think, I'm pretty much sold on that as a concept. But by and large, no, I had a very interesting chat with Tim Burnhope at JCB. We were on the JCB stand for a little while and saw the new excavator and everything else. But they also had a hydrogen generator on the stand. But we were talking about what he referred to as microgrids. So bearing in mind, we're gradually working towards a world where we will need to draw power from something or energy from something other than diesel. He was talking about microgrids and having a power source to power the batteries then power the equipment, and the way that that's likely to change the industry. I found that interesting. I'm not entirely sure I'm as convinced as he is, but this is my first exposure to it, so I thought that was a very, very interesting one. Was there anything that surprised me? Seeing one of the big XCMG wheel loaders up close certainly looked the part. EC230E from Volvo, the electric version. We're talking about a 20-ton plus excavator here. And it whistles. It doesn't roar, it just whistles. And in the right environment, it just makes so much sense. It really does. So no, I had 2 fantastic days. I met some fantastic people, some that I already knew, some that I'd never met before. Fantastic. Thoroughly enjoyed it. There was a bit of me that wanted to stay for another day. There was a bit of me that wanted to get back to do the show, and that part of me actually won. But did I come away thinking I have just seen the future? As I say, hammer glass, Lecatech, possibly these microgrids, but apart from that, no, not really. It was more of the same. And I'm not entirely sure that's a bad thing. Bearing in mind we've had, with excavators and wheel loaders and dump trucks and dozers. We have had the best part of 100 years to perfect it. And I know I said that maybe we had reached peak design on some of these machines. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we can now focus on just tweaking the edges and just making the really good great. Maybe. I know it's a strange direction to go off in, but when I was writing the history of the NFDC back in the day, going back through the minutes of their meetings, way back when, the 40s and the 50s, site fatalities were a regular occurrence. And over a period of decades, that number has gradually come down and come down and come down to the point where we now get awfully excited about people tripping over their shoelaces. We've largely eradicated, not completely, there's still a way to go, but we've largely eradicated site fatalities, which has allowed us to concentrate on those other things, like getting bits of crap in your eye, so wear safety glasses, nicks and cuts on your hands, so wear safety gloves. We've come a long way, and I do wonder if we've come at exactly the same distance with our equipment design, because I can't remember the last time I saw a machine and thought, that's just gone off in a completely different direction. I think the high-vis dumper from JCB was remarkable, but as far as I'm aware, I think they've dropped it. So maybe it looked good but wasn't as good. I actually don't know the answer to that. But I genuinely can't remember the last time I looked at a product and thought that's gone in a completely new direction. Even the Lecatech breaker, when you look at it, it's electric, although you can use it with a power pack on a hydraulic machine. But it's basically designed to be an electric breaker on an electric excavator, and infinite controllability. Really, really fantastic product. But it looks, at a distance, you'd look at it and go, it's a hydraulic breaker. It just happens to have a cable rather than a hose. So yeah, I genuinely can't remember the last time I saw something that sort of stopped me in my tracks. Where and when is the next big show? Next big one that we're going to is Mine Expo over in Las Vegas, which is in September time, back end of September, I think. We're just speaking to the organisers about that, and then we'll start to figure out our travel and itinerary and everything else. But yeah, that's our next big one. And then obviously next year is it's a plant works year, but it's also a Bauma year as well. So that'll be the next big one. The proof of a machine is in the operation and power of it. Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I did sit. I sat very comfortably, even though I just whacked my head. Sat very comfortably in a 97-ton Hyundai excavator. Proves nothing. It could be the most powerful 97-ton class excavator in the entire world. It could be incapable of taking the skin off a rice pudding. I don't know, because it was static. Another thing that worries me about electric machines is the wiring. With most of the machines now, it tends to be an electrical problem that stops it working. Will electric machines still have the same problems? Interesting point. Yeah, interesting point. Funnily enough, one of the questions that came up when I was talking to Lecatech was obviously electric. How do you go about dust suppression? Because as we know, I'm not a scientist, but electric and water don't often sit well together. But apparently the electric part of the breaker, entirely sealed, water won't affect it. But it's a point. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, certainly the number of reasons we've had to take various cars back over the past few years have been electronic. Nothing mechanical. It's all been electronic or electric. Question forward. I don't look forward to not being able to enjoy what I do best in years to come. Yeah, I don't know whether that's. I think in previous years, my fear of the future would be loneliness. I guess, not having family and friends around me and stuff like that. But yeah, I've become very, very aware of. It's not even my mortality. It's become very, very aware. After I had my burst appendix, and I'm not going to dwell on that, but after I had my burst appendix, I became very aware of precisely where my appendix had been, because the pain had been so excruciating and so prolonged that I mean, literally, if somebody said, "Where were your appendix?" I could point you, millimeter perfect to exactly where they would have been on my body. I've become very attuned to my body now. I think mainly as a result of that. To the point, I mean, obviously, I've mentioned in the past, I'm diabetic, and I'm very, I've had a couple of days away where I've been largely eating shit. I've had burgers and pizza and stuff like that because it's convenient. But my body is now saying, you need to knock that on your head. You need to get some veg on board or whatever it might be, you need to be better hydrated. Thankfully, Hillhead had lots of drinking water stations around, and I'd taken a bottle with me and everything else. So I didn't do too badly. But to be perfectly honest, it wasn't a matter of me not staying hydrated. It was the fact that I was so bloody busy. I just didn't have a time to stop. But I'm so aware of that, so the next couple of days I'll be living largely on vegetables and drinking lots of water, because my body is telling me that's exactly what it needs. Let me rattle back. I'm not going to go all the way back, because that would take far too long. Finally, just going back to Gary, we did actually bump into Carl from Steel Wrist on the way into the show, and I did promise that I was going to go and see him, and then ran out of time. Just completely ran out of time. So, Carl, if you're watching, my apologies, but I will see you again very, very soon. Where is the question today? There you are. What is your greatest fear of the future? And my fear is that we won't have a future with all these clowns, world leaders around wanting to end it. Yeah. Do you know, it's a strange thing. Obviously, I am knocking on the door. I'm 6 months away from being 60 years old. So I did most of my growing up, if I ever did, in the 1980s. And the 1980s was a period where, this is height of the Cold War. So you had Russia and America constantly threatening each other and stuff. And it basically, it was that much of an ever-present threat that it even influenced music. You think back to Two Tribes by Frankie Goes to Hollywood. It was about basically the nuclear standoff. And then the 80s ended, we had the 90s, we had 2000, the 2010s. And I wouldn't say I'd been lulled into a full sense of security, but you'd have thought, having got that close on a number of occasions, post-war, during the 60s with Kennedy and Khrushchev and whatever, and then going through it again with Ronald Reagan, you'd have thought I was beginning to think that maybe we'd learned our lesson. And yet here we are again, no better at all. No better at all. And regardless of where NATO borders lie and everything else, the Russia-Ukraine thing is happening in Europe. It's our doorstep. Yeah. What else have we got here? Chris Ford says, question of the day, getting old, not being able to do things for myself, but it's coming. Yeah, that was one of the things that my dad really struggled with in the lead up to his premature demise. He'd always been incredibly active, he was one of these people that just never sat still. If he wasn't tinkering around with something, he was in the garden. If he wasn't gardening, he was out fishing. He was fanning around with a car or whatever it might be, always doing something. And then COPD basically said, no, you are basically confined to an armchair and people will have to fetch your food and stuff. And I know the illness affected him, but I think the impact of the illness impacted him a whole lot more. Question of the day. Jim Turner says, my family's and my health, everything else I can sort out. So health is my only worry. Well, you look fighting fit to me, Jim. You look fighting fit to me. Let's have a look. Mick Norton says, question of the day, that in due course it will become the norm that the head in the Great British Pint of Ale is inclusive of the pint measure. That's a very specific one. As somebody, I don't drink, but as somebody that travels to other parts of the world, Germany and France, where the head is 3/4 of the drink, I'm a little more laid back about that. Let's have a look. Who else have we got here? Dan Cullen says, question of the day, not enough money to travel to more shows and affording ever increasing B&B costs. Yeah. Funnily enough, we were talking to Chris McGuinness at Awesome Earth Movers, and Awesome Earth Movers doing some fantastic work. I mean, they've got like 1 million followers on Instagram, or more than 1 million followers, and Chris has just had 3 weeks in Australia. Basically, he went to Australia at his own expense to go look at some diggers. Now, the way that YouTube and Instagram and TikTok works, he will, over a period, recoup that money, and it will make him money in the long run. But to afford both the time and the money to just jump on a plane, fly halfway around the world, and then spend 3 weeks looking at diggers. Despite the fact that I've got this show to do and everything else, I wish I had that capability at the moment. We shall see. Having said that, I'm doing better than some. Turns out the World Demolition Awards, which is usually very, very well attended and well backed, they've had to extend the deadline for entries this time around because of lack of entries, which doesn't look good. And the Worthing Advertiser yesterday was hit with a winding up order from HMRC. Good morning, Worthing. Nope, we've done that one. Let's have a look. Who else do we have here? Hammerglass. I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to say this. Hammerglass sounds like a godsend for me. We deal with a lot of high tensile wire, which certainly finds the gaps in the window guards. Wouldn't find the gaps in Hammerglass because there are none. And even from, we were talking to a guy, oddly enough, we were talking to a guy who was basically walking past. He was nothing to do with the stand demonstration. Let me wind back. I'll come back to this guy in a second. When you went to the face, I don't know, there was maybe 15, 20 excavators there, a couple of wheel loaders, a couple of ADTs, and all of the major manufacturers had paid operators to come along and drive those machines. Hammerglass, which was a static display, had basically put on the floor this imitation cab with their Hammerglass front screen, and the operators were the public. Public would just walk up, grab the sledgehammer, do their level best, and everybody, every bloke that had a go thought that they would be the one to smash it. They didn't. They didn't even come close. It just wasn't even a thing. But talking to a guy who was walking past, and he wielded the hammer a couple of times and said, "Yeah, that's tough as anything." He was working in a scrapyard, and he reckons that his firm is replacing a windscreen monthly. I don't know the cost of Hammerglass. I'm sure it comes at a premium, quite possibly a hefty premium, but I bet it doesn't cost as much as 12 regular front screens, and 300 times the strength of actual glass. 300 times. Yeah. Let's have a look. Who else do we have here? Just rattling through the chat here. Gary Muirhead says, still feel the manufacturers are just dipping their toe into electric equipment market, because if they wanted to go all in, why aren't they offering more electric equipment in the range? I think we're at the point of chicken and egg. I think that's what it is. And funnily enough, we were talking about this on the way up to Hillhead itself. Obviously travelling with Fred and chewing the fat and everything else. We now live in an age. I mean, let me think. I think JCB, Lugong, Sunward, I think there's another one, but all had prototype machines on their stand. And if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. What they're doing is basically saying, here's a thing, we could make it, much the same as some of the stuff that we showed you with Bobcat a few weeks ago. We could make it, but we won't make it until the market says, we'd like one of those, please. At which point I think they kick in. And I think the modern forms of manufacturing, 3D digital printing and that kind of thing, it allows people to iterate machines in a fairly relatively low-cost way to basically suck it and see. Put it out into the market and say, we have this idea, we can do this, we've proven it internally, we can do this. Do you want it? And I do think that the electric thing, I think there will come a tipping point. And despite the promises from JCB, who reckon that hydrogen is mere moments away, I am still firmly of the belief that something will happen. It might be some sort of environmental tipping point. It might be some legislative tipping point. But I think something will happen in the market, and we'll all have to go, okay, electric it is then. And I do Might not be tomorrow, might not be next year, might not be 5 years hence, but I do think there will come a time when we just have to accept the fact that that's the way we're going. Electric powered machines have historically been larger than other powered machines. They were cost effective years ago. Overhead cranes, dockside cranes, large drag lines, bucket wheel excavators all tend to be electric powered. One thing they have in common is availability to an electric grid, which I think is precisely the thinking behind this idea of this microgrid that JCB were talking about. And when you think about it, it's kind of like the natural progression. You know, go back 5 or 6 years, you know, a company like Volvo made equipment with a diesel tank, and then you took care of the refueling on site or off site or from a Bowser or from a tanker or whatever it might be. Since they've begun to advocate and pioneer for electric machine, they've also developed their own charging solutions. So you can actually buy and own a Volvo electric charging station. I think JCB are thinking exactly the same way. If we have got to have some form of future power, be it diesel, be it electric or hydrogen, or a combination thereof, we basically need to have what is effectively a power station per job site. Not every job site, and you know, if you're on rental, maybe that microgrid belongs at the yard or at the depot rather than out on site. But if you're a site of any sort of magnitude or any duration, you will, you know, the word is that you will have a microgrid. You will basically install your own power station to keep all of your equipment topped up. There's a bit of me that thinks that feels like a step back because, you know, we do have a grid and so on down the line. But there's also another bit of me that thinks, is that a way for companies to control their costs, to control how equipment is powered? For example, you know, you could go out and buy yourself a generator, a diesel generator, and just try and feed all of your electric machines with the power from that. Or you could go a bit further and install a solar panel unit, in which case you're now just powering your equipment free of charge directly from sunlight. If you go that extra mile, you're basically operating, your running costs are greatly reduced. There's a lot of flexibility there. Yeah, you did miss the hammer glass stand. You'd have been good for that, Jim, because it turns out Jim's quite a big fella. I've got a photograph here of the pair of us together. He's a lot bigger than I am. Sounds like the perfect occupation, traveling the world looking at diggers. Where do I sign up? Hey, listen, I've signed up. Don't get to do it anywhere near as much as I'd like to do. I'm going to make plant works. I'm glad to hear it, Dan. I haven't seen you since the last one, I don't think. 10 days off 60. 10 days off 65, a mental age of 12, a physical age of about 90 today. So it's your birthday coming up. Is it, Mr. Ford? Well, I'll put a note in the diary and make sure you get the recognition you deserve. No, we've done that one. People won't buy or want what they can't see. That's why manufacturers need to push the boat out with things that are different to the norm. There's a gap in the market range that needs filling. They haven't realised the gaps exist because they aren't on site. Yeah, I think you're right. I do think, and as I say, I mentioned this to one of the guys from SMT, I do think one of the things that those that are in the electric equipment sphere should do is grab themselves a plot of land, you know, or several plots of land up and down, you know, like these equipment road shows, and invite along as many operators as they possibly can and give them some serious stick time with an electric machine. I genuinely believe this, and I know there's a lot of anti-feeding, and I know we haven't still properly answered resale values and what happens to the batteries at the end of their working life and all that. But I do think if you spend an hour driving an electric excavator or an electric mini excavator or an electric wheel loader, you will climb off. I reckon more than half will climb off and go, no, that really is very, very good. It's quieter. It's no smoke, no noise. It's as quick as all balls. And I do think it would be a fantastic way to convert people. Hammer Glass claim their product is 340 times stronger than glass. Does their literature indicate manufacturer to a particular standard of safety? I've got their literature here somewhere, but I don't know where I've put it. Let me check. I will check. Anders may still be watching over on LinkedIn. I will check with him. I'll come back to you on that, Mick. It's a good point. Did Mr. Turner bring any of Mrs. Turner's cakes? Sadly not. Sadly not. And to make matters worse, all the time I was talking to Jim, there was a smell of fish and chips on the JCB stand wafting through the air. And I had none. I had no fish and chips whatsoever. I got the invite, just didn't get the food. Didn't have the time. See, these are the sacrifices I make to bring this show to you. Almost every day. Everybody, that's about it. That's an hour and a half of your life you're never going to get back. So go and do your thing. Go and do your day. I'm going to be back here tomorrow with more of the same. I don't know what we're going to feature from Hillhead tomorrow, but we will be featuring something, and I'll give you a good look at that. But do yourself a favour. Go and have a look at the Lekatech, Lekatech. Go and have a look at the electric breaker over on YouTube. While you're there, go and have a look at Hammer Glass. Don't take my word for it. As I say, I'm not being paid. I'm not endorsing the product, but I've seen it. I've hit it with a sledgehammer. It didn't break. To my mind, that's a good thing. Go and have a look, and I'll see you tomorrow. Till then, everybody, have a fantastic day. See you all very, very soon. All the best.